We survived. Hurricane Idalia decided it didn't want to. Oh, there we go. Hurricane Idalia decided it didn't want to. There we go. There we go. We're going to blame that on Hurricane Idalia. We survived. We didn't wash away. Luckily for most people in Florida, it decided to hit a spot that was pretty uninhabited. Doesn't mean there's not people affected, but it didn't hit a major metropolitan area. Didn't wipe us out. As always, it's the CFB Dynasty podcast with myself, Matt Knowles. I am the host. Down below, the master of the brisket. Don't ever let him make excuses for how good the brisket is that he makes, Mr. Brian McElfresh. And if you've never done a draft with Intoxica Doug, you might want to try it at least one time. Over here, we got Doug Gravely. I got to sit beside him, who was a little bit less than fully coherent at the home league draft on Saturday, and it was interesting. It was a fun experience. How you guys doing today?
I was respectful, though, I believe, correct? I was a nice guy.
Oh, you were respectful. Doug and I had a lot of fun when he would be like, I got 8 wide receivers on my board. I'm not going to get any of them. Like, who's the top guy on your board, Doug? This is my top guy right here. This is who I want. Okay, cool. You want me to take him right now, Doug? Yes. So I even let Doug pick my last defense. I'm not really thrilled about that, but he did such a nice job at the beginning of the draft picking guys for me. I let him pick a defense I really didn't want, but I thought that was kind of payback for myself for taking his guys, you know.
You're welcome.
All right. So we have a huge show for you today. If you have any issues with the connection, my connection right now is really bad. That is probably one of the only effects from Idalia that we're feeling right now. But my connection kind of sucks. So if there's any issues, blame it on that. Today we got a huge show, news and notes. Is there any weather impact around the country? Rankings discussion, top over under games, questions from the Discord, the Open updates. The Open is our 24-team league that we did the draft on last week. We're going to look at the difference between drafting in a 24-team Open redraft league and then our 12-team home league that was a college to Pro Dynasty. Look at the differences there. And then last but not least, we have the first official Brisket Lock of the season for week 1. Are you guys excited?
I am beyond excited. I cannot consume enough content. I was watching a great show, a little Florida, Utah statistical intro by college football nerds. They're a great show as well. So beyond excited for kicking off the game tomorrow night. I will be alone. I'll send the family away so I can be angry on the couch by myself. That's my style.
All right, so B-Mac, why don't you tell everybody about the interactions on social, the schedule, things like that.
Yeah, so I did post the week 1 rankings up yesterday, and we'll get into that here a little bit later on the show. But overall, here's our in-season. It's super fast-paced. It feels that way to me, and it makes college football go by even faster. But typically on Sunday is when we will release our waiver wire gems. This is going to be us gathering the data that we can gather. Typically, what percentage of it's typically based on what percentage of ownership exists within Fantrax, and using some other metrics to kind of pull that in and put together some waiver wire gems for you guys. And I'm open to any feedback you have. Typically Tuesday, and if it can be earlier, we'll do it earlier, but typically Tuesday we'll have player rankings out. You'll be able to access that. I've adjusted the navigation on the website to where if you hover over rankings, CFF, then you'll see week 1. As soon as week 2 is up, boom, that's where I'll put it there. And it'll also be live on the rankings page if you come in on the main rankings page. Or you can go to news and articles, recent posts, and all the recent stuff will be there too. Wednesday would be this show, live rankings, lineup prep, etc. I'm really excited about our host battle at the end of these shows, going over a little 1v1v1 DraftKings lineup and we'll kind of unveil who we selected and go over that. That's going to be fun. And then Thursday, we have our player props article submitted to the Sporting News, and that'll probably be published either then or Friday. And we'll do our DFS article for CFBDynasty peeps Friday, typically, potentially Thursday if we can get it out earlier. Always like to publish earlier if possible. And then this year, Doug and I still don't know yet. I haven't been able to connect with you, Matt, on your schedule, but it'll at least be Doug and I Saturday mornings. We'll come up with a time, probably 10 a.m., where we'll go live, taking start-sit questions and unveiling some DFS stuff using the tools, etc. that we have. So I'm excited about that, Doug. You got your DraftKings loaded up yet, ready to go?
Oh, I'm ready. Man, I've got like 4 DraftKings for tomorrow's games. I actually was in so early I had to reserve my spot because I was like, listen, I'm not going to let my spots slip away from me on the first night of, college football games, which I consider the first actual night. So,
yeah. The values that exist are insane right now.
Correct,
if you look
100%.
at whoever sets these things, they don't know college football very well. They could really use our help at DraftKings and FanDuel, but we'll take it.
I was surprised how inexpensive some players were, where I was like, okay, I'm down for this. Can it be like this every week?
I'm going to spend as much money as possible on DraftKings and FanDuel the first couple weeks of the season until the data, et cetera, catches up. But I always bet a lot the first weekend because there was one opening game for Alabama that I did one of those, single game FanDuels, and I came in second, I think, out of a bunch of people, and won a good amount of money. I'm going to always continue to do that, and this year just happens to be Florida, Utah. So that's one of them, at least, that I'll be battling against all the Utah and Florida fans probably, but super excited about that for sure.
All right, so good stuff there. So, Doug, I'm going to kick it over to you. I want you to tell us some of the news and notes this week. There's a couple of really good points in here. One of my favorite ones deals directly with BMAC. We're going to get it at the bottom of the list. It's hilarious how much this story just keeps taking a turn. But we'll get there. We'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to, share this with, the people that already don't know, or even the people that know, just remind them. But number one, and one of the ones that, we've all been watching really, really, really closely. Kyle McCord is expected to start for Ohio State this weekend. Devin Brown is expected to play, but how much he's going to play, I don't know. I would imagine just depends on how Kyle McCord is doing at the time. And then a surprising one for me, seeing as how this young man was on my fantasy team at one point in his career, and I ended up dropping him, but Ethan Garbers was named the starter for UCLA. Again, Schlee and Moore expected to play, but it would just depend on A, is UCLA blowing them out of the water, or B, is Garbers not playing very good. Then we've got, Kamar Wheaton, running back for SMU, not listed on the depth chart. He's got an injury, so that could affect some rosters. DeJuan Edwards for Georgia, the running back, practicing in a non-contact jersey, but Kendall Milton for Georgia is back to normal practice, so he appears good to go. Then you've got Tyler Levine for SMU, listed as the backup on the depth chart. Cade McNamara, quarterback out of Iowa, medically cleared, but listed as questionable. Ontario Brown, running back for NIU, officially listed as the starter. JT Shrout, quarterback for Arkansas State, listed as the starter. And this first name I'm going to demolish. Biasul Tootin, running back for Virginia Tech, listed as the starter for week 1. I believe he was a transfer. And UCF is in a 4-person quarterback one battle this week. And then Liberty is in a 3-person quarterback one battle this week. So expect to see multiple quarterbacks from those teams. And if you are doing a DFS or if any of these quarterbacks are on your team, don't start any of them because we don't know what's going to happen. It could be for UCF, each quarterback playing a quarter. I just don't know. And then 2 more, we got Burt Emanuel, who was regarded as, very fantasy relevant going into this season for Central Michigan, the quarterback. He is now in a quarterback one battle with Jace Bauer. So Burt Emanuel might not even be a go-to guy in fantasy when a lot of people had him, moving up because he was potentially going to be a 4-year starter. And now to my favorite note, which is in all caps.
Ding!
Gilbert, tight end for Nebraska, Brian's boy, arrested for burglary charges. And if you didn't get to see the video, it's pretty funny looking. He's got like this mask on and he's kicking in doors, and it's like
it's not a good look.
Burglary, like
Wasn't it for like $1,500 of vape items, something ridiculous like that?
I think the total was $1,600 when I last researched it, and it's just one of those things where it's like, man, how many more times can you kick yourself in the foot? They interviewed Matt Rule yesterday, and he was talking basically about how disappointed he was and how they've been trying to, get, influence in Gilbert's, life to try to help him make better decisions. But you could hear the disappointment in his voice. So, that's aside from fantasy relevancy, aside from, anything else, you just hope the kid can get his mind right and start making better decisions.
Man, it's brutal. Like, why couldn't he just do that and get arrested like a week earlier? Then I could have dropped him. So this happens in our league where we only get 3 drops a year. So I'm kind of stuck with him for a while, and that sucks. But whatever, man, whatever. It's one of those.
I love
things
it.
where
I love it.
I've him for so long. Anyways, yeah, that's that.
All right. So as for Hurricane Idalia, right now does not look like there's any games at the moment that are going to be impacted by Idalia, by the weather, by the water, the wind, anything like that. Travel. I know there's a few schools that traveled early from Florida. I think it also matters where it ends up landing, because it's going to go through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. But I think, fortunately, most of those schools are playing away this week. Coastal Carolina, NC State, Florida, a lot of them are playing away. So
I'm happy, man.
It looks like we're going to be okay as far as that goes.
Annual thing where hurricanes mess up week 1 or week 2 for Florida schools. So kind of happy it's passing through. It's a faster moving storm than normal. So be gone, storm, or get out of here before week 1 starts, so it doesn't mess with any of our games.
About that real quick, I don't know if any of you saw this, but there are actually 2 charts that show Idalia circling in the water and coming right back to Florida.
That'd be weird.
So it's
that's crazy. We'll see if that happens or not. That'd be interesting.
All right, so one of the main things we wanted to go over, and I'm going to add this to the stream here so you guys on YouTube can see, going over some of the rankings updates that we have here. So I'll show you what I talked about earlier. Basically, you can go to, when you come to the site, rankings, CFF, boom, week 1, it's there. You can always access it just by clicking the rankings page, and they'll be posted and listed there, or news and articles, recent posts. We'll have waiver wire gems there, all that stuff, and DFS posts later in the week, where we'll feature our lineups, players that we spot, etc. That's going to all be available to members. So a little write-up. One of the things for sure that stood out to me in week 0, and we'll talk about it in a little bit in the Discord questions segment, but Zachariah Branch, holy crap. He looks incredible. Like immediately, it's like super fluid, extremely fast, but not just like in and out of jukes, so fluid. He just reminds me of Tavon Austin. He's a different level of speed against everyone else out there. So who are we going to see? Because there will be more, and we talk about that a little bit. Will it be Carnell Tate? Will it be some others? Maybe Mark Fletcher at Miami on Friday night? We'll see. There lists our schedule, and then there's a little spreadsheet key, and that's what we're going to go over right now because there's new stuff as you get to it. So we list them all out here. So we have a section for quarterbacks and then each position down the page. There is a search box here, so you can use that to search anything that's within this table here or spreadsheet. So if you're looking for a team, if you're looking for an opponent, if you're looking for a certain player, you can search that. Of course, you can always throw that in Excel if you want an XLSX file. But columns as we go through, of course, the ranking, the player, the team, the opponent. HA is just home or away, whether they're home or away. That's different from the previous year. Fantasy points is last year data right now. As soon as we go into next week, it's going to flip to year-to-date data. So that'll be a growing total every week for total fantasy points and then fantasy points per game. And then we will typically include a trailing 3 weeks so that you can more easily spot trends. That's really important for seeing someone, especially if you're in a limited pickup league like ours, where you got to be really strategic on who you pick up. You might want to wait till that guy, has that second game to kind of back up what he did the week before. But either way, we'll have trends there. It also helps us spot, other things. So we have the spread. That's the Vegas spread. This is not a moving metric like it is in real life. We put it in typically Monday or Sunday. So the line can move a point or two. And if it does, we will not pick up on that here in the spreadsheet, but it typically rarely does it move a lot where it would really affect our data. So that's totally fine there as it is. The over under is the total number of points. And then we have projected points for. That's for this player's team. So USC is projected with an over under of 66 between the two teams and a spread of 38.5. USC will be at about 52.25 points this week against Nevada, who will score 13.75 ish points, obviously. So that'll give you, based on the spread, based on the over under, an approximate score. And that's how we can help tally how many potential fantasy points are out there. And then we've added some other color-coded things here. The projected points for is extremely important. We use it heavily. Also, if you see zeros in there, that is typically like Bo Nix this week is playing against Portland State. So there's no spread to even bet. Like you can't bet that game. There's no line or anything. So it's going to be green there across the board. I've got to fix that zero red. That should be green. But I'll fix that after the show. So Bo Nix has the easiest opponent possible. No way to bet it. That's why there's zeros there. That's something we could change. Then the last four, the SP plus offense. So if you're familiar with ESPN's Bill Connolly, he has an overall database to kind of track, and it's the best that I know of where he's able to power rate the offense and the defense and teams at large. And this shifts over the course of the year. He puts it out every week, a new SP plus, but we won't need it except for a few weeks because of the last two metrics, which we'll get to. But this is a power rating of USC's offense and the SP plus offense metric. So basically this accounts for recruiting. This accounts for performance on the existing roster. This accounts for transfers. They are number 2 in the country, and they're playing against the SP plus defense of Nevada, which is a 90. So number 2 versus 90, you can see why that's an extremely favorable matchup there for Caleb Williams, and thus he is our number 1 start of the week at quarterback. The defense versus the pass. This is currently 2022 data. This will update weekly as we get into it. The data will become more and more accurate, obviously, as data points reach statistical significance, meaning we've had 3, 4, 5 weeks into conference play. So it's more apples to apples rather than Oregon against Portland State type of teams. So Nevada ranked 75th against the pass last year. They ranked 85th against the rush. So that's all there for you to kind of use. The question that I always ask, and I want to just ask Matt live. I've already talked to Doug about this, but is this too much information? Is this what people want? I love big spreadsheets, but what do you guys think?
I don't think it's too much, because the way you have that spreadsheet set up, if somebody wants to get a specific piece of information, all they got to know is which column they want to go to. But I agree, I'm the same way. I want to have as much information as possible. That way I can use the metrics I need to make the informed decision. If it's there and you don't want it, you can just ignore it. If it's not there and you need it, well, how else are you going to get it? So I think it's great that all that information is out there. I like the fact that you're improving it year to year, and I think it's awesome. Doug, what about you?
Oh, yeah, like Brian said, we talked about this. I like it. I just think it's going to be better and better as the season progresses, because as of right now, for me personally, in one hand, you don't care how the defense performed last year because of transfer portals and all this, and there's so much changes. But at the other side of that coin, a defense isn't necessarily going to go from 120th to 55 in a year. So, you know, it's going to be a good thing, because the defense, in my opinion, is not going to jump 100 spots in less than a year. So, but I just look a little deeper into things, but I love how deep this goes, because I'm just like you guys. I love a big spreadsheet. You can never have enough information. It's great to know if my quarterback that week is playing against the 5th ranked defense, or if they're playing against the 110th ranked passing defense. I want to know that stuff. I think that stuff is huge.
Yeah, it's stuff we always took into consideration, but it's like the old math homework where you have to show your work kind of thing. And I feel like that's more beneficial. And really, that's where I want to take CFBDynasty, as we will unveil more and more tools throughout the course of the year. As you know, data comes in and the developer is able to kind of finish stuff up. But the goal is for it to be a set of tools to help you bet on DraftKings, bet on FanDuel, and set your lineups, etc. So super excited about the direction. We want to give you guys more and more as we go throughout the season. So I guess if you want to run through the top, 5 or 10, you guys have seen the quarterbacks now up on the screen for a while, but if you're listening on podcast, we've got Caleb Williams, number 1, Bo Nix, number 2, Austin Reed, number 3, Michael Penix, number 4, even though he's playing against Boise, who had a really good pass defense last year, and then JJ McCarthy against ECU, and really this is beatdown city for most games this week, which makes setting the lineup really hard, right? So, like Matt, Doug, how do you guys handle that typically? If you have, let's say, a more even matchup where your player's going to play the full game, you're looking at maybe even Preston Stone and them. They're favored over Louisiana Tech by 20. So, like, would you rather your player play the full game, or are you going to take someone that might just play a half?
Go ahead, Matt.
I think week 1 and week 2 are a lot more difficult difficult than people give it credit for that exact reason. Especially if you have a guy playing against, say, like an FCS school, he may only play a quarter or two, and he may not get a lot of the stats. He may go to other people, maybe running backs over wide receivers or running backs over quarterbacks. I do like having guys that are going to play the whole game, but I definitely don't want it to be where it's the other way, where you've got a guy on, say, South Alabama that's playing against Alabama's defense or something. You don't want it to be where your guys are the opposite, where they're on the opposite end of the beatdown. But yeah, it definitely makes it a little more tough, because especially with, the way that rosters are constructed nowadays, they may want them to get in for a quarter or so, they get the backups in. But yeah, it makes these first couple of weeks a little more difficult. I'd rather have a guy that's going to play the whole game, but if I have to default after that, then I'm definitely going to go with the guy that's, going to hopefully get some stats and then get the heck out of Dodge.
At running back, we've got Judkins number 1, and it's beat down city for all of these top guys. Rocket Sanders at 2, Rasheen Ali at 3, Blake Corum at 4, Jarquez Hunter at 5. So they're all playing against putrid defenses. It's going to be tough. It's going to be kind of luck of the draw, like Matt said, week 1 or week 2. Does your player score in the first quarter, second quarter? If not, he might not play the second half. So that's just part of the struggle week 1, as well as unlisted suspension, unlisted injuries, that kind of stuff is always super frustrating week 1. And then at receiver, we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. first, Adunze 2 for Washington, Corley 3rd, Cowing 4th, and Joshua Cephas 5th, because DeCorian Clark's status is unknown for that game. So I removed DeCorian Clark from the rankings altogether. My rule of thumb week 1 is to play the knowns. Like, just because Jalen Milroe or Kyle McCord or whoever in this quarterback battle has been listed number 1, or even if they come out as the starter or are named the starter like Kyle McCord was, the other guys are going to play in these beatdowns, and it only takes 1 or 2 bad decisions or fumbles or whatever for the quarterback to be pulled. So I'm going with the most stable known commodities on my roster for week 1 and week 2. Tight end, blah, blah, blah. Bowers, Gadsden, Jatavian Sanders, Eric All, Urasek, all with great matchups. We've got kickers listed there as well. And there's a ton of unknown kicker battles. And then there's a ton of great defenses that are playing against nobodies. So I assume everyone's roster is kind of loaded up and fine for week 1 in terms of it's less about playing the matchups, more about playing stability and kind of getting lucky week 1.
Agreed. All right, so that's our quick look through the rankings. We want to try and cover those a little less on the pods than we have in the past, because we want you guys to want to go up and like and subscribe to the CFBDynasty.com site. So you have to go up there and take a look at that information, sift through the information on your own, and how to make the best educated decision you can for your team. So, BMAC, are you ready for some questions from the Discord?
Let's go.
All right, so Willem T asks, are there any players we should be going after on the waiver wire after their week 0 performance? I think there's a couple obvious ones out there, but I'm going to kick it over to you guys. Who are some of the guys from week 0 that you should have your eyes on right now?
I see you added one, Doug, and that's a great one. For me, Zachariah Branch is totally different. Like, I made a trade middle of the draft. So here we are. We're drafting in like a conference room. We have a couple people on the screen because they're in Georgia and didn't drive down to the draft because they don't care about us at all. So Doug and I walk out. We make a trade, and I trade up and get Carnell Tate. And I was super excited to land him in the second round of our like mix of Dynasty, Devy League, whatever. And then right before me, Zachariah Branch was picked, and I really just seeing the highlights, because we drafted on week 0. That game was happening near the end of our draft. So after seeing the highlights the next day, since no one got to see it live, I was envious. Zachariah Branch looks so good. I think he's going to be the featured player at USC, and totally would advise at all costs to go get him. I think he's going to be legit, whether it's Devy, CFF, whatever. Go get Branch.
Agreed. Branch looks incredible. He's so fast. Just watching some of his highlights, man, he was doing cone drills out there. It was insane. But I added Jaden Greathouse for Notre Dame. Sam Hartman has shown in the past and showed again last week that he does love to distribute the ball around to different people. But Greathouse made the most of his opportunities, 3 catches, 2 of those were touchdowns. And I think they're going to try to look to continue that trend and do the same. So Jaden Greathouse, a freshman receiver for Notre Dame, is on my list. And quickly, I'm just going to throw another name out there for you guys. Shamari Lawrence, running back, sophomore for Florida International, 139 rushing yards this past week. So keep an eye on that guy. Could be a surprising, college fantasy producing running back, because those are always good to have on your roster.
Hey, so I'm going to throw a little piece of information at you guys that I just noticed. So at number 8 on the tight ends ranking, you got Seydou Traore from Mississippi State. News says that he is not listed on the Bulldogs depth chart for Saturday against Southeast Louisiana because there might be an NCAA clearance issue with him for week 1.
Oh, no.
And he's one of those guys we would need to pay. He's one of those guys we want to pay attention to as well, because isn't he one that's got that weird, is he a tight end? Is he a wide receiver?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, he is. Last I saw, he's making trends toward being listed as a receiver.
Yeah, we did have a couple
because I know
issues,
that,
and super grateful people were able to kind of reach out, and that's part of the community. Having the community is, hey, we made a couple mistakes and people caught them quick, so that was super grateful for that. So thanks for that.
That's a good little good little news note that I just came across as we're doing the show. All right, so anybody else? What'd you think about the way that Esteem played after being benched in the Notre Dame game? He got benched for a fumble and then came back and went nuts.
That dude looks massive. That's all I know.
Yeah.
But the issue with Notre Dame that I see, and it's not really an issue if you're a Notre Dame fan, any one of those 4 running backs can come in and produce, I think. They all look good. And kudos to their strength and conditioning coach. That's all I can say, because I wouldn't want to arm wrestle any one of those guys. So
yeah, and Hartman changes that offense, man. Even with the younger guys at receiver, like that offense looks like it's going to be looks like it'll work, and I think they're going to be a tough out for anybody. And they got some fun big games coming up on their schedule.
All right, so the question number 2 we got from the Discord from Sir Mocha. Are you concerned with Ohio's Rourke's QB, his injury, and the offensive output for targets like Wiglu's? Now, I'll tell you something really funny before we get there. We had our home draft the other night. The guy sitting next to me, Josh Speed Reed, the fastest guy, 4.3, 10-yard dash time. Speed Reed has got Rourke, and he was upside down about him coming back from the injury, getting injured while we were doing the draft. He was so disgusted with the fact that his guy got injured again in that draft, during the draft. But are you guys concerned? Do you think it's going to change the offensive output numbers for Ohio?
Nope. Because Rourke's a known commodity. Like, he had a good 2021. Then last year, 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, 4 picks. And the coaching staff also said they were just being extra cautious, and that Rourke was mad at the staff for being cautious with him. Mm-hmm. So no concerns there whatsoever.
One day ago, he was cleared to start, I think.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
So Question 3 from Rose Cats. What transfer quarterbacks that went Power 5 to Power 5 have the best chance of having a huge boost in production like we saw with Penix and Nix last year? I think there's a whole bunch we can talk about here. So I'm going to let you guys start.
First of all, did anyone out there think Bo Nix could be in the Heisman discussion? Did anyone see Michael Penix Jr. leading the nation in passing? And I didn't. I don't know if anyone did, but would love to shake their hand if they did, for sure. Because if you look at Bo Nix beforehand, like, he was a really good recruit. Played as a freshman at Auburn, 2,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 picks. Then he goes in sophomore year with a 59.9% completion percentage, 2,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 7 picks. And then 2,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 3 picks in 2021. And then last year, comes out with 3,500 yards, 29 and 7. Quickly going through Penix's stats, he went for 1,300 yards, then 1,600, then 900 in 2021. Always battled injuries, and then 4,600 last year for Washington. 31 touchdowns and 8 picks. He had never had more than 14 touchdowns in a season before that. So we're talking about players that are good recruits, talented. They just needed a fresh start. And so, yeah, I've got a few for you. So DJU is one, and I'll say Hartman doesn't count, Leary doesn't count, Mordecai, Armstrong, they all performed well at their previous stops. But DJU is one that I've got, like, the offense actually makes sense to him, and the Clemson system under the previous OC, who was fired, wasn't great. Maybe he realizes his 5-star potential. I've got Jeff Sims at Nebraska, who I like a lot, and I've always liked his skill set. If he reaches his potential there this year, next year, he can be really great as a dual threat guy, and then he'll be fantasy relevant too. And then another one that was a big recruit for Wisconsin, and like the staff admits to misusing him, Graham Mertz. Like, I would temper fantasy expectations due to Coach Napier's history with fantasy quarterbacks. Like, they're typically not a QB1, QB2 caliber, but in terms of his ability on the football field and being serviceable for the Gators, I think we'll know that quickly into the season with road game tomorrow at Utah, and then 2 weeks from now hosting Tennessee at home. So those are my guys. Doug, anyone to add there?
The only one I have to add, I'm not saying like look out for Heisman or anything, but definitely a step in the right direction would be Hudson Card going from Texas to Purdue. I think could be a surprising one. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying like, oh, this guy's going to throw, 4,500 yards, 50 touchdowns, and 2 picks, but he could definitely be a surprising quarterback at Purdue.
And Matt, let me throw the last question to you from J24 in the Discord. What's the best way to tackle waivers in an 8-man league with every team available for picking?
All I can say is this: an 8-team league, you have to limit them. If you don't, every single team in that league should be incredible. Every team in that league should be unreal every single week. I think that the one question for J24 is, how big is your roster? How small is your roster? Do you have a 30 position roster? Do you have a 14 position roster? Because that can also determine what you do. But if you're not going to limit those pickups, man, just go out there and you got to be working that waiver wire hard every single week, because if you're not, every other team in that league is and they are going to be putting you on beatdown alert.
Yep, that's valid.
But I can't even imagine an 8-team. I can't even imagine an 8-team league with open waivers. That's a seasonal redraft league. Those teams should all just be insane.
All right, so let's move along to the open update, and then we'll do our reveal of the DFS host battle here and go over some of our selected DFS lineups for this week. All right. So for me, I want to kick it to Matt to talk about Uncle Joe and his back-to-back pick delay. So if you weren't in the draft, Uncle Joe was the first pick, and it's a snake draft. So every other time he picked during the draft, he got back-to-back picks.
All right. So let's because this is a 24-team open league, and because we didn't want to consolidate or force somebody in this 24-team league to have to draft in the middle of an afternoon, the decision was made by somebody, not going to say who, but that it was going to be an hour between picks just to make sure that people had a chance to get in there and pick. The thought was good, but what that did was it basically enslaved every single one of us to have to be there ready for the draft because you didn't know if somebody was going to take an hour or 2 seconds. This draft took 3.5 days. I do not make that up. It was 3.5 days long. And we barely ended this draft before we started our open league draft. So, case in point that BMAC's talking about. Uncle Joe comes back around. He has had 46 picks from his pick, now back to his next pick. Uncle Joe took, 54 or 57 minutes to make his first pick?
And then he was...
to make his pick in the second round.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, cool. He's going to make 2 back-to-back. Really good. And he took an hour to make the third pick. So he took nearly 2 hours to make 2 picks.
Oh, it's so terrible. That's
back-to-back picks, nearly 2 hours. That was
how about Carissa drafting
ridiculous.
Day-Day?
Ridiculous.
How about Carissa drafting Day-Day Hunter?
So, Carissa. So we busted her chops during the first round because she was, didn't have her priorities straight. She was actually like working with a client or coming to work or some crap like that. Whatever the excuse was, after that first round, she knew she had made a mistake. So she was on top of it all draft long until she drafted Day-Day Hunter, who has already said that he is out. He is not playing this year. So Carissa, come on, man, get with the program. Why are you drafting Day-Day?
The only positive, and I told her this, was it was her last pick of the draft.
Yeah.
That was the only semi-positive to that pick, was that hopefully it was a player she isn't going to use a lot anyways.
Yeah, whatever. All right, so I agree, but we're not here to give her props on this show right now for taking someone that's out for the year.
Nope.
My probably value pick of the draft here, Clashreen. I don't know if I said that right. Reggie Love in the 16th round, a guy who might be a 15 plus a game carry guy for Illinois. I love that pick, and pardon the pun there, but I think just excellent value. That's one where in our draft in the home league, man, Danny took Josh McCray, and I wanted him. I hyped him up all year, or all summer, and then I waited too long on him. Just can't do that. And what do you think, Doug? Value pick.
My value pick was CyberCon CFB taking Great House in the 15th.
Yeah, that's your boy. I like
not just my boy, but I feel like I'm starting to, prove over and over again that I'm good at these sleeper guys. Like, JJ McCarthy when nobody else was talking about him. Rocket Sanders last year. My guy this year is obviously Great House. So let's see if I go 3 for 3. This could be fun.
We'll see.
I'll tell you the thing that killed me in that draft. You can never really predict that you're going to be able to get a guy in the next round. When you got a 24 teams, You're talking a ton of picks between one and the next. I drafted 17th or 18th. I had 2 guys that were there that I wanted. I drafted one. I'm like, man, if X player is there when I come back around 36 picks later, I'm going to be happy. 35 picks. I'm like, I'm on the clock. I'm like, I'm going to get my guy because he has been out there and 35 people have passed him up. And then Steelers pride decides to come in the pick right before me and take Jerron Bradley from Texas Tech. I was pissed, threw the rest of my draft off because I was like, I can't I was not happy. But yeah, so he's now become my my rival in the league. So if he's on my schedule, you better watch out, my boys. That's going to be bulletin board material. We're going to make up some crap that he said about our team, that he talked a bunch of garbage about it, hype the boys up so the Steelers pride can get the butt whooping.
Oh, that's awesome.
Let's make up some crap.
So Doug,
I will say this though, the one thing we did we did want to cover is the difference between drafting for the Open League 24-team redraft versus our 12-team college pro dynasty league where you're just filling in. Doug, Brian, take us through how much difference you felt the prep was for these 2 drafts that were completely back-to-back.
So the difference for me, the biggest difference, obviously, it was you can draft players at any stage of their college career with a draft like this, whether it be seniors or juniors or guys you think are going to go pro next year. With my draft or our draft in our ongoing 15-year league here, 16 now, going on 16. But if you have too many seniors, you worry about them leaving, and then all of a sudden you have a complete rebuild, which to some could be fun. So the prep is different when it comes to, in these redraft leagues, you can draft anybody. With our league, you have to have a balance on your roster, and I think that makes it pretty difficult. So,
because you don't want to have one position get wiped out where you're drafting 6 receivers in 1 year like I did this year. But it's all right from time to time if you're making a run for a championship that fails you lose to Gordy in the playoffs.
Or in the championship.
Yeah, in the Open League, I would completely the opposite of what I would normally do in a draft. Almost everybody I picked was a Power 5, a guy that is going to be a top producer this year. Didn't really take a lot of reaches because there's not a lot of room to reach. And then if there's a problem and I missed on somebody, then I just go pick them up on the waiver wire with our auction draft or our auction pickups. In the home league, you look at your draft board, you look at the Open League, and you know who's going to be going. You know, hey, in the next 24 picks, this group of players is probably going to go in some order. You go back to our home league, and you can look at around, and you're like, those guys weren't even on my board. I know what Doug probably said to me 14 times at the beginning of the draft. That dude's not even on my board. That guy wasn't even on my board. I can't believe that guy just got picked. He wasn't even on my board. Just goes to show how different of a thought process it is picking for a seasonal redraft as compared to a college pro dynasty. It was actually a really fun case study.
It makes it like crazy because you don't know what's on everyone else's board. Like you would a standard redraft NFL or college fantasy league. You kind of know where you can get players, what round they're going. ADP is pretty legit, but in like a Devi college to pro league where you have to factor in college points, pro potential, all and like seniors, balance of juniors and underclassmen and all that stuff. There's a lot to consider, and it makes you feel more like a GM where you're building a roster. But dang, you never know because, like you said, everyone's board is different. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. I didn't have a first round pick, and so it was tough to wait to the 2.3.
2.3. I had to wait to 210,
where I did get the number 1 player on my board. So it was that part was good, but All right, Doug. So Matt, I know you didn't get your lineup in, right? But you'll get one in before the Saturday games kickoff. But we wanted to do a little different segment where we do a little host battle here. We have a 3-man DraftKings pool where it's just us three, and we're gonna unveil our lineups right now against each other. So I think we just have Doug and I for now. And all right, yeah, Matt's shaking his head, yeah, because he's had technical difficulties. There's a kind of a rough latency today, so you'll hear us interrupting each other. And sorry for that. That part stinks. But all right, Doug, for the noon games, who do you have at quarterback?
I've got Leary for Kentucky at quarterback.
What's the price on Leary?
81.
81. So I have Chandler Morris from TCU at $6,900, and I think TCU is gonna crush Colorado. So I love the value, love him in my DraftKings lineups as a quarterback to target this week. Who's your running backs?
So because I think TCU is going to crush Colorado, I have Imani Bailey as one running back who was $5,400.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got good old Bucky Irving out of Oregon who was $6,100.
Oh, that's good value. Solid. And hopefully he gets his points early.
Yep, go ahead.
At running back, I've got Estime, Notre Dame, 7,200, hoping he gets a first half touchdown at least. And then Dylan Johnson in a game that he might play the full game. They've got running back injury problems, and he's not one of them. So he's the clear starter for Washington as they're hosting Boise State. And he was only 5,200. Dylan Johnson at 5,200. Okay. So love the value there. There's a lot of value that I like. At receiver, though, I take some risks. So while I feel good right now with those three, looking at my receivers, I feel a little nervous. Who do you have?
So my first receiver, I'm going with the stack because I got Leary at quarterback. Mm-hmm. I'm going with Barryon Brown, who was 5,500.
Cheap.
Oof.
Then I'm going with Stephon Cobbs from Boise, who is playing Washington, but Washington doesn't have the best pass defense, in my opinion. And he was only 5,400. And then I went with Xavier Worthy out of Texas for 6,600 for my third receiver.
I've got Rome Odunze at 7,300 for Washington. And that stacks with my super flex of Michael Penix at 8,400. And then I've got Carnell Tate at 3,700. That's a freshman's first game.
That's a high risk, high reward kind of kid right there for sure.
Yep. And then Deontay Thornton, which I think he's going to catch a lot of touchdowns this year for Tennessee. And I like him better than I like Brew McCoy. So Tate was 3,700. Thornton was 4,300. And I used that to allow myself to get $8,400 on the Superflex Penix. Who do you have at Superflex?
So I'll go with my flex real quick.
Fine.
My flex is Dylan Johnson, running back for Washington. And then my super flex is Ewers to stack with Worthy. Ewers was $7,700.
I like it. So super flex Penix for me, and then I've got Javonte Barnes at 7,000 for my standard flex. So we'll see how it goes. There's nothing that we're betting outside of just this $5 bet currently between me, Matt, and Doug. So we'll see how these go. And then if you guys come up with something interesting for us to bet, then we'll do it. Maybe.
Speaking about the bets, y'all, if you've been following our little golf thing here, an update on that. Brian is still up 2-0. And it may end at that, and we may have to do away with our other 2 rounds. Obviously, I'm fine, but I was in a car accident yesterday, so money may be a little tight for things, but we are still planning on going, still planning on making it the best trip we can and all that good stuff. So we should in a month or so have a lot of fun stuff for you guys to follow while we're there. But as far as the rounds go, we may stop at 2 at this point. I'm not
way
sure
to bring
yet.
the show down. I don't think we'll stop at 2. We'll see how it goes. Anyways.
Good lands.
All right. Brisket lock time. Matt, let's start with you. Final little bit of the show here.
Boom.
Let's go to brisket locks.
All right. Brisket lock. So if you guys have not watched the show before, or if you missed last year, Brian is the master of cooking the brisket. And if Brian's cooking brisket, it's going to be good. So when it comes to the brisket lock, this is going to be a guy that is not going to be in the top 10, not going to be in the top 20, somebody who might be a little bit farther down that you think is going to have a good week this week. Yes, I'm an NC State fan. Yes, I'm wearing my NC State gear today. But even if I wasn't, I would say my brisket lock is Brennan Armstrong for NC State. Here are a couple reasons why. Brennan Armstrong is playing, although he transferred, he's playing with his offensive coordinator, Robert Anae, who 2 years ago helped him blow the lid off of college football with his statistics. So he's been reunited with his offensive coordinator, and allegedly the vibe is really good around the offense at NC State. We're talking about the first week, so UConn is not going to have a lot of tape on what is happening at NC State with that offense. There's not going to be a lot of way for them to be able to prepare other than looking at tape from a couple of years ago. Also, if you roll back to the beginning of the conversation we had today, UConn is going to be a pushover, but I don't think they're going to be an FCS level pushover. So I think you're going to see Armstrong playing the majority of the game. MJ Morris will get some snaps, but I think Armstrong is going to get the majority of the game and has a chance to just blow the lid off in week 1 this week against UConn. Doug, who do you have as your brisket lock?
So my brisket lock is Kobe Hudson, also known as K Fizzy on the X-verse, if that's what we call it now instead of Twitter. But he's playing against Kent, and I really like Plumlee a lot at UCF. I think Plumlee's going to have a great year. If you paid attention at the beginning of the show, we have Plumlee as our number 6 quarterback. He is dual threat, but I really like Hudson establishing himself as the guy for UCF.
For me, I've got Jalen Knighton at SMU. There's a lot of oars on the depth chart, even with Jordan Curley, which doesn't worry me. But there's not an oar at running back. It's Jalen Knighton and the Rooster. He's really great. He's fast, runs hard, and I think he will kill it in that offense. We're able to catch a bunch of balls too. So I like him. We've got him slotted at 50th at running back, but I think that's one he can outperform before he ranks a little higher. We're going to want to see that data in the SMU offense, but in general, like him a lot this week. And Matt, this is when you froze and died last time, but at the end of the live show, and I closed this out. So I'm going to play the music, and let's see if you can close us out.
All right. So really glad you guys are here. Really glad that you have decided to join us. It is finally time. We are psyched for college football, the fantasy football season to start in just over 24 hours. Can't wait. We want you guys to get up, like, and subscribe on the Discord channel, on Twitter/X, on TikTok, wherever B-Mac and Doug decide they want to put our stuff at. We want you to involve yourself in the Discord channel. If you've got tidbits of news, if you got tidbits of notes, if you got questions, we want you involved as well. We want you to have the opportunity to use the information that's there to give yourself a leg up in your league and hopefully bring home that ever elusive college fantasy football championship. How's that, B-Mac?
That's okay. What I didn't tell you is that the music only lasts 15 seconds. So we'll get better on the next show. See you guys.
See ya.